We weren't the kind of couple people expected to drift apart. For years, Rachel and I had been the picture of stability, the couple who brought the best wine to dinner parties, who remembered anniversaries without reminders, who still held hands at the movies. But over the past year, we'd become shadows of that couple, somewhere between job stress and spoken resentments and silence that grew louder each night. We'd stopped trying. That's why tonight felt different. It was our first real date night in months. No talk of bills, no icy distance over dinner, no subtle scrolling under the table. Just her, in that navy dress I hadn't seen in ages, and me, finally looking at her without bitterness in my chest. The restaurant was dimly lit, intimate, a small Italian place tucked into a quiet corner of the city. The kind of place where you could hear the clinking of glasses, soft jazz in the background, and the occasional soft laughter from nearby tables. We laughed too, about the mess Liam made with spaghetti last week, about the time we got locked out of our own house after a wedding, about everything and nothing. It felt like a temporary return to who we once were. For a fleeting moment, I let myself hope this was the turning point. Then it happened. She swirled the last sip of her wine and looked at me with a crooked smile. Honestly, she said, if this dinner had gone badly, I was gonna download Bumble tomorrow. She laughed. I didn't. The words didn't hit me like a slap. They landed quieter than that, more like a sharp pinprick through a healing scab. Small, but surgical. I know she meant it as a joke, a test maybe, something playful to mask her own fear. But it landed wrong, so wrong, the warmth between us evaporated in a second. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, staring at the flickering candle between us. She noticed. Her smile wavered. Hey, it was just a joke, she said, eyes softening, but the moment was already broken. The fragile thing we'd tried to piece together over appetizers and red wine had cracked right down the middle. I stood up, slowly, quietly. Ethan, she said, her voice a whisper. Wait. But I didn't wait. I wasn't angry. I wasn't dramatic. I just walked out, past the waiter who nodded politely, past the coat rack, past the little chalkboard sign that read "Love is served daily." Outside, the night was crisp. The air cut through me, colder than it should have been for spring. I didn't look back. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I didn't want to remember her face in that moment. I didn't want to carry the look of someone, realizing too late that words have weight, especially when spoken to someone already trying to stay afloat. I don't think Rachel expected me to actually leave. She stayed at that table long after I walked out. I know because she told me later, or maybe she told someone else who told me. The details blur now, but what I do remember is that the moment I stepped out into the cold night, I didn't feel free. I felt emptied, like something I'd carried for too long had finally slipped out of my hands. Rachel sat alone, fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass as the noise around her grew louder, not because it actually did, but because her focus sharpened to everything but herself. The laughter from the couple beside her, the clink of silverware on ceramic, the low hum of music, all of it sounded too real, too harsh, like life had resumed while she remained frozen in place. The waiter came by after a few minutes. Is he coming back? He asked gently. Rachel shook her head. No, he's not. She paid the bill, left a tip too generous for the service she barely noticed, and stepped out into the same cold that had greeted me just minutes earlier. She looked down the street, hoping maybe she'd catch a glimpse of me walking away, or maybe turning back. But I was gone. Her heels clicked against the sidewalk as she wandered aimlessly. It wasn't far to our apartment, but she didn't go there right away. She walked a few blocks, then sat on a bench in a small plaza near a bookstore we used to visit. It was late, the kind of late where everything is closed, and the streets only hold silence and headlights. She thought about texting, but what could she say? She played the moment over again, her laughing, my stillness, the sudden vacuum that had sucked the air out of the room. She knew the joke wasn't harmless. She'd felt it the second it left her mouth. It was the kind of line you throw when you're scared of vulnerability, when you want to test if the other person is still willing to fight for you, or walk away. And I had walked out. It wasn't about Bumble. It wasn't about dating apps or failed dinners. It was about being so close to mending something fragile, and then dropping it without realizing how thin the thread had become. Rachel sat there until the wind picked up and the chill finally got to her. She pulled her coat tighter, stood up, and started walking home. When she reached the apartment, it felt different. Still the same key, same creaky door, same hallway, but something had shifted. The air was heavier. She sat on the couch in the dark. No music, no TV, just her and the sound of the refrigerator humming and the distant traffic outside. That's when the guilt began to claw its way through. Not the dramatic kind. Not the kind you scream into pillows about. The quiet kind. The kind that whispers, "You knew better." She remembered the way I looked at her right before standing up. Not with anger, but with something worse. A kind of quiet surrender, like someone who had stayed too long already and finally saw no reason to stay longer. And the worst part? She knew I was right. Rachel didn't sleep that night. She lay awake in bed, fully dressed, waiting for the sound of my key turning in the lock. It never came. At 3:12 a.m., she checked her phone again. No message, no missed calls. The lock screen glared at her, cold, blank, and final. She opened our old chat thread, typed a few words, deleted them, typed again, then left it empty. Her fingers hovered, unsure whether silence was safer than trying. By morning, the apartment felt like a museum of us. The faint smell of my cologne lingered on the hallway rug. My coffee mug sat rinsed on the counter, flipped upside down like I always did. Her eyes landed on the bathroom door, opened just slightly, and something in her chest tightened. She pulled herself up and walked slowly toward the bedroom closet. Half of it was empty, not messy, not rushed, just empty. My jackets were gone. A few drawers open but clean. The suitcase we bought for our honeymoon missing from under the bed. That's when it hit her. I hadn't just left dinner. I had left in the kitchen. A small piece of paper waited on the marble counter. She hadn't seen it when she got home. Now it was impossible to miss. Folded once, neat handwriting across the front. "Rachel." She sat down before opening it. "I'm not leaving in anger, just clarity. You don't need to explain. I've understood for a while. Please don't try to reach out. Take care of yourself." That was it. No drama, no accusations, no list of wrongs. She read it 3 times. Then she cried. Not loudly, not even messily. The kind of cry that comes out in broken exhales. The kind you don't try to stop because you know it's all that's left. She held the note for a long time, then folded it again, slower this time. She set it back on the counter like it was something sacred. By noon, she hadn't moved. Her phone buzzed once, a work message. She ignored it. Then, finally, she opened her message thread and typed, slowly, "Can we talk?" She stared at the screen for 5 full minutes. Delivered. Not read. Not replied. Just delivered. She didn't send anything else. She knew I had seen it, probably within minutes, but the response never came. And over the next day, then the next. Still, nothing. No typing bubbles. No scene. No second message. Just the echo of a single question that would never be answered. Rachel stopped waiting after that. Not because she stopped caring, but because she finally understood. I hadn't left to teach her a lesson. I left because I had stayed long enough for her to hear every unspoken one.